What if I told you that one of the fastest growing religious communities in England is also at the center of some of the most heated public debates today? Across major cities, conversations about Islam, identity, and culture are becoming impossible to ignore, and the numbers behind this shift are raising serious questions. At the same time, protests are increasing, tensions are rising, and social media is amplifying every moment. But here's the twist. What you're seeing online might only be a small piece of a much bigger picture. So what's really happening beneath the surface? In this video, we're breaking down 10 powerful reasons behind this trend, based on real data, social patterns, and human behavior. Some of these may surprise you, and others might completely change how you see the situation. Number 1. Population growth trends. One of the most important and often misunderstood reasons behind the rising visibility of Islam in England is simple population growth. This isn't happening overnight, and it's not random. Studies consistently show that Muslim communities in the UK tend to have a younger age structure, which naturally leads to higher birth rates over time. When a population is younger, more families are being formed, and more children are being born. This creates steady, long-term growth. Now here's where it gets interesting. While many other population groups in England are aging, meaning fewer births and more older citizens, Muslim communities are experiencing the opposite trend. This creates a noticeable shift, especially in cities where these communities are already established. Over time, this growth becomes more visible in schools, neighborhoods, workplaces, and public life. But visibility can sometimes be misleading. When people suddenly notice growth, it can feel rapid or even overwhelming, even if it has been happening gradually for years. This is where perception and reality start to blur. What seems like a sudden change is often the result of decades of steady demographic patterns quietly unfolding in the background. Understanding this helps us move beyond assumptions. Instead of reacting emotionally, we can start to see this as part of a broader demographic evolution, something that many countries experience in different ways. The real question is, are we paying attention to the data, or just reacting to what we think we see? Number 2. Immigration patterns. Another major factor behind the growing presence of Islam in England is long-term immigration patterns. This isn't something that started recently. It's the result of decades of movement, shaped by history, economics, and global events. Since the mid-20th century, the UK has seen waves of migration from countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, and parts of the Middle East, many of which have Muslim-majority populations. But here's the key point most people miss. Immigration doesn't just happen once, it creates generations. The people who arrived years ago built families, communities, and cultural networks that continue to grow today. So what we're seeing now isn't just immigration. It's the second and third generations becoming more visible and active in society. There's also another layer to this. Immigration often increases during times of global instability, conflicts, economic struggles, or political uncertainty. When people move seeking safety or opportunity, they bring their beliefs, traditions, and identities with them. Over time, these communities become part of the national fabric. However, perception again plays a huge role. Many people assume immigration is happening at a massive, sudden scale today, when in reality, much of the growth comes from established communities expanding naturally. This misunderstanding can fuel unnecessary tension or confusion. So instead of seeing immigration as a short-term event, it's more accurate to view it as a long-term process that reshapes societies gradually. The real question is, are we looking at the full timeline, or just reacting to what feels new? Now I'm curious, what's your take on this? Drop your honest opinion in the comments, because your perspective matters more than you think. And if you value the effort behind breaking this down clearly, hit subscribe. It's just one click, but it keeps this channel alive. Number 3. Urban concentration. A powerful reason why Islam feels more visible and rapidly growing in England is something called urban concentration. In simple terms, many Muslim communities are clustered in major cities like London, Birmingham, and Manchester. And when a population is concentrated in one place, its presence becomes far more noticeable compared to being spread evenly across the country. Think about it this way. If 10% of a population is spread out across rural areas, you might barely notice it. But if that same 10% is heavily concentrated in specific neighborhoods, it can feel like a much larger percentage. This creates a strong perception of rapid change, even when the overall national numbers may be growing at a steady pace. Cities also act like magnets for growth. They offer jobs, education, business opportunities, and establish community support systems. Naturally, people tend to move where they feel more connected and supported. Over time, these areas develop their own cultural identity, with mosques, halal restaurants, clothing styles, and community events becoming part of everyday life. But here's where it gets interesting. Human psychology tends to magnify what we see frequently. If someone lives in or visits these urban hubs, they may assume the entire country is changing at the same pace, which isn't always the case. This gap between local experience and national reality can easily lead to confusion or exaggerated perceptions. Understanding urban concentration helps explain why change can feel so intense in certain places, while remaining almost invisible in others. Number 4. Social media amplification. One of the biggest forces making this issue feel bigger, faster, and more intense than ever before is social media. Platforms like TikTok, X, and YouTube don't just show reality. They often amplify the most emotional, dramatic, and controversial moments. And when it comes to topics like religion, identity, and protests, those are exactly the kinds of posts that spread the fastest. Here's how it works. Social media algorithms are designed to keep you watching, clicking, and reacting. So when a protest happens, even if it's small or local, it can be filmed, edited, and shared in a way that makes it look larger and more intense than it actually is. Within hours, millions of people can see it, comment on it, and form strong opinions without knowing the full context. Now imagine this happening again and again. Different clips, different angles, different narratives, all feeding into a constant stream of content. Over time, this creates the feeling that these events are happening everywhere, all the time, even if they are actually limited to specific locations or moments. Another important factor is echo chambers. People tend to follow accounts that match their beliefs, which means they keep seeing similar content repeatedly. This reinforces their views and can make the situation seem even more extreme than it is. So the real question becomes, are we seeing reality, or a version of reality that's been filtered, selected, and amplified for attention? Be honest. Has social media ever changed how you see an issue? Drop your thoughts below, because your perspective could open someone else's eyes. And if you appreciate the effort behind content like this, hit subscribe. It's one click for you, but it helps us keep going. Number 5. Identity and cultural debates. Another powerful reason behind the rising attention is the growing discussion around identity and cultural values. As societies become more diverse, questions naturally begin to surface. How do different cultures coexist? Where do traditions meet or clash? These aren't new questions, but today, they are being asked more openly and more publicly than ever before. For many Muslims in England, especially younger generations, there's a balancing act between religious identity and national identity. They are navigating what it means to be both fully British and fully connected to their beliefs. This creates a more visible and confident expression of identity, whether it's through clothing, language, or public participation. At the same time, others in society may feel uncertain or even concerned about how these changes affect shared values or traditions. This doesn't automatically lead to conflict, but it does lead to debate. And when debates become emotional or politically charged, they can quickly turn into protests or public disagreements. What makes this even more complex is that both sides often feel they are protecting something important, whether it's cultural heritage, freedom of expression, or social unity. This is why these discussions can become so intense. But here's the key insight. Debate isn't always a bad thing. In many cases, it's a sign that society is actively trying to figure itself out. The challenge is making sure these conversations stay informed, respectful, and grounded in reality, not driven by fear or misunderstanding. Number 6. Political narratives. Another major force shaping this entire conversation is political narratives. Whether we realize it or not, politics plays a huge role in how issues are presented, discussed, and even perceived by the public. Topics like immigration, religion, and national identity often become central talking points, especially during elections or times of uncertainty. Here's where it gets interesting. Different political groups may frame the same issue in completely different ways. One side might highlight concerns about integration or social cohesion, while another focuses on diversity, inclusion, and human rights. Both perspectives can influence how people think, feel, and react, even if the underlying facts haven't changed. This constant framing can create a sense that the situation is more extreme or urgent than it actually is. When strong language is used, words like crisis, threat, or takeover, it naturally grabs attention, but it can also increase fear or tension. And once emotions are involved, people are more likely to take sides quickly, sometimes without fully understanding the issue. Political debates can also spill into real life, turning into public demonstrations or protests as individuals and groups express their support or opposition. This makes the issue even more visible and can give the impression that divisions are deeper than they really are. So the key question is, are we forming our opinions based on facts, or on how those facts are being presented and framed? Let's be real. Do you think politics is informing people or influencing them? Drop your honest opinion below, because your voice adds real value here. And if you see the effort behind this breakdown, hit subscribe. It's one simple click, but it helps us keep creating content like this. Number 7. Visibility of religious practices. Another key reason why Islam feels more prominent and noticeable in England today is the increased visibility of religious practices. Over the years, expressions of faith, like wearing the hijab, attending mosques, or observing Ramadan, have become more visible in public spaces. This doesn't necessarily mean there's a sudden surge. Rather, it reflects a growing confidence among individuals to express their identity openly. Think about it. When cultural or religious practices move from private spaces into public life, they naturally attract more attention. Mosques are more visible, halal food options are more common, and religious celebrations are more publicly acknowledged. For some people, this is a sign of a diverse and inclusive society. For others, it may feel unfamiliar or even overwhelming, especially if they haven't experienced it before. There's also a psychological factor at play. Humans tend to notice what stands out from their everyday norm. So when they see something different, whether it's clothing, language, or traditions, it can feel more significant than it actually is. This can lead to the perception that change is happening faster or more dramatically than it truly is. At the same time, for many, this visibility is simply about freedom of expression, the ability to practice their beliefs without fear or restriction. And in a society that values individual rights, this becomes an important part of the bigger picture. So the real question is, are we reacting to change itself, or just to how visible that change has become? Number 8. Generational shifts. A major factor that often goes unnoticed is the impact of generational change within Muslim communities in England. The newer generations, those born and raised in the UK, are growing up in a completely different environment compared to their parents or grandparents. They are not just part of one culture. They are navigating multiple identities at the same time. This generation is typically more confident, educated, and socially active. They are participating in universities, entering professional careers, and engaging in public discussions. Unlike earlier generations who may have stayed more within close-knit communities, younger Muslims are more likely to voice their opinions, take part in debates, and express their identity openly. And this changes everything. When a group becomes more visible in media, education, and public life, it naturally draws more attention, both positive and negative. Some people see this as a sign of integration and progress, while others may interpret it as a shift that feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Another important point is that younger generations are deeply connected to the digital world. They use social media not just for entertainment, but to organize, speak out, and mobilize around issues they care about. This can contribute to the rise in protests or public discussions, making their presence even more noticeable. So what we're really seeing isn't just population growth. It's a generation finding its voice. And when voices get louder, conversations become harder to ignore. Quick question for you. Do you think younger generations are bringing people together or creating more division? Share your thoughts below. We genuinely want to hear you. And if you value the effort behind these videos, hit subscribe. It's one simple click, but it means everything to us. Number 9. Global events influence local reactions. One of the most overlooked reasons behind rising tensions and protests is the impact of global events on local communities. In today's hyper-connected world, what happens thousands of miles away doesn't stay distant. It becomes instantly visible and emotionally real for people living in England. Conflicts, political decisions, or humanitarian crises in different parts of the world often resonate deeply with Muslim communities who may have family ties, cultural connections, or shared religious identity with those regions. When something significant happens internationally, it can quickly lead to local reactions, including protests, demonstrations, or public discussions. But this doesn't only apply to one group. People from all backgrounds react to global events that align with their beliefs or values. The difference today is the speed and intensity of these reactions. News spreads within seconds, videos go viral within minutes, and emotions can build rapidly without full context. This creates a situation where local communities are not just responding to what's happening in their own country, but also to events across the globe. As a result, protests in England may sometimes reflect international issues, even if they appear local on the surface. For many observers, this can feel confusing. Why is this happening here? But in reality, it's a reflection of how deeply connected the world has become. Understanding this connection helps explain why certain issues spark strong reactions, even far from where they originally began. Number 10. Misunderstanding and lack of dialogue. Finally, one of the most powerful reasons behind rising tension and debate is surprisingly simple: misunderstanding and lack of real dialogue. In many cases, people form opinions about Islam or any community without ever having a direct conversation with someone from that background. Instead, their views are shaped by headlines, short clips, or secondhand information. When communication is missing, assumptions quickly fill the gap. Small differences in culture, language, or religious practices can be misinterpreted as something bigger or more concerning than they actually are. Over time, these misunderstandings can build into fear, frustration, or even division. What makes this more complicated is that both sides may feel unheard. One group may feel misrepresented or judged, while the other feels uncertain or excluded from understanding what's really going on. Without open and honest conversations, these feelings don't disappear. They grow stronger. But here's the important part. Most of these tensions are not driven by facts, but by lack of information and limited interaction. When people actually talk, ask questions, and listen, many assumptions begin to break down. What once felt unfamiliar starts to feel more understandable. In the end, the issue isn't just about religion or demographics. It's about communication. The more people are willing to engage respectfully, the less space there is for confusion and conflict. So maybe the real solution isn't louder arguments, but better conversations. Now it's your turn. Have you ever changed your opinion after a real conversation? Share your experience below, because your story could change someone else's perspective. And if you appreciate the effort behind videos like this, hit subscribe. It's just one click, but it truly supports the work we do. So when you step back and look at the full picture, one thing becomes clear: this isn't a simple story. It's not just about religion, and it's definitely not about one single cause. What we're seeing in England today is the result of multiple powerful forces coming together, from population trends and immigration patterns to social media influence, political narratives, and global events shaping local reactions. Each factor on its own might seem small, but when combined, they create a situation that feels bigger, faster, and more intense than it actually is. And that's where perception plays a huge role. What people see especially online or in certain cities, can feel like the entire reality, even when it's only part of the story. At the same time, it's important to understand that behind all these trends are real people, individuals trying to live their lives, express their identity, and find their place in a changing society. Some are embracing this change, others are questioning it, and many are simply trying to understand it. This is why jumping to conclusions can be dangerous. Without context, it's easy to fall into fear, assumptions, or division. But with the right information, things start to look very different. You begin to see patterns instead of panic, and understanding instead of confusion. The truth is, change is a natural part of every society. The real challenge is not stopping change, but learning how to navigate it wisely. So the final question is simple. Will we react based on emotion and headlines, or respond with awareness and understanding?